BlackRock, which is the best credit rating in the world. So they get a very, very low interest rate, and your child has to compete against them when they're paying much less. So they have an advantage. They're always going to be able to win in that battle. I'm running against two presidents who both are running on the platform that they brought prosperity to this country. Enormous prosperity. I travel around this country even before I was running for president. I travel around, I sit at people's kitchen tables with them. As my job as an attorney, because I do mass tort litigation, so I'm dealing with mass casualty events. People, large numbers of people have been poisoned by chemicals. I'm representing, for example, 1,000 families in Columbia County, Ohio, whose lives were upended by the Norfolk Southern spill. Before that, I was representing 10,000 families in West Virginia who were poisoned by a big smelter there in a town called Smelter. I represent 10,000 families in Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia who were poisoned by DuPont with PFASs, PFOAs, these flame retardants. I end up sitting at people's kitchen tables a lot and understanding what their lives are like and what they need. And I'm seeing a level of desperation in this country that I've never seen before, that I associate with other countries, not this. When I talk to them about President Biden and President Trump, saying that America is now experiencing unheralded prosperity, they look at me like I'm crazy, and they say they feel like they're being gaslighted. And we now are in a situation where the average income in this country is $5,000 less than the average cost of living. So that means basic human needs, food, transportation, and housing. And how are Americans making up that $5,000 deficit they experience every year? They're putting it on their credit cards. And that credit card company is charging them 22% interest. If the mafia did that to you, it'd be called loan sharking and they'd be sent to jail. But it's another organized crime syndicate called Visa and MasterCharge that are charging those rates, and then the big banks, Wells Fargo and Morgan, et cetera. And who owns those companies? BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. So they've got all of these ways for strip mining the wealth away from the American middle class, away from the people in this country, working people, working poor in this country, and shifting it upward. And during COVID, they shifted $4 trillion north from the American middle class, the biggest shift in wealth in world history, to the super rich. We created during the COVID lockdowns a billionaire a day, 500 new billionaires in 500 days. And they were created by gorging on the bleaching cadavers of the American middle class. We closed 3.3 million businesses, and we made Amazon the only business. We left Amazon open. We left Amazon as the only business. We taught everybody how to ignore their local retailer, the guy who's paying taxes locally, who's giving your kid a summer job, who's employing local people. They were all shut down, and we were all taught to responsibly use Amazon. How much taxes do you think? Amazon's one of the biggest companies in the world. How many federal tax? How many dollars do you think they paid? Hello? How many dollars do you think Amazon paid in federal taxes last year?
Probably not much.
0.
Wow.
And that's right. So this is what we're seeing all over the country, and the Americans, 57% of the people in this country could not put their hands on $1,000 if they have an emergency. And what that means is that if they see the engine light come on in their car, it's the end of the world for them, because they can see their lives spiraling toward homelessness. Because if they can't afford that mechanic, then they're going to lose the car, and they're going to lose their transportation to work, they're going to lose their job, and they're going to lose their house, and that's how they end up on the street. And that's why California has 50% of the homeless in this country, because they're people who were not drug addicts, they were not mentally ill, They simply lost their jobs. They could not pay their rents. And the rents now are skyrocketing in this country. 48% of Americans, they have trouble paying their rent. And the rents are going up because of the pressure that's being put on by BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, buying up all the houses, they'll own the houses. If you're in that position, your life is a series of impossible choices. You have to choose, and I talk to Americans every day who are cutting down. A woman last night told me she and her friends were cutting down on their medicines in order to take it instead of a pill a day, which they're supposed to go half a pill a day, or one pill every 2 days, to pay for the food. They're choosing between food and gas money. That same kid told me that every week he has, on 1 day a week, he has to choose between filling up his car or getting dinner that night. This, in America I grew up in, nobody was talking like that. There was poverty in our country, in the deep South and in Appalachia, but it was pockets of poverty. It was not, it was not commonplace. It was not the common everyday experience of Americans. And these people know that the politicians aren't listening to them. You never heard Republican debates last week. Nobody was talking about this stuff. Nobody mentioned BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. Nobody is talking about what's really happening, and people in our country feel angry and they feel ignored. They're choosing I talk to parents who sit in their living room listening to a baby cry in their lap and have to wonder whether that baby is $50 sick or $100 sick or $1,500 sick before they bring them to a hospital. And this is happening all over our country today. When I grew up, well, you know what it's like when the gas gauge in your car is on empty and you're driving and you don't know where the next gas station is. That's what it's like when you're living paycheck to paycheck. When you're in that situation, that's the only thing you can think about. It lowers your IQ. It makes you stupid because you're so fearful about, am I going to make it? And now, put 2 kids in the back seat of your car. Put a toddler in a baby seat and another kid. And then put in the scenario that you're also driving through a bad neighborhood. And that is the anxiety level that Americans are living with in their day-to-day lives every day in this country, not just a few of them, but across the board. And I grew up in a time that was the opposite of that. I grew up in an era that economists and social scientists call the Great Prosperity. It was a period of time that was triggered by a housing boom that happened after World War II when Americans would all buy houses because of the GI Bill. And people were getting in houses, and once you get that house, now you have equity, you have ownership. So you're plugged into our system of democracy, but you also have access to the gate of capitalism. Because you have access to capital. Because if you have a house, you can get a second mortgage on it, and you can make a bet if you want to start a business, a restaurant, if you just want to buy a sewing machine and start a little business, you have the access to capital to do that. If you don't own a home, you care a lot less about your community, you care a lot less about your schools, you care a lot less about the police and how things work and look and how they appear, and you have no access to the capitalist system. So that's what we did after World War II, and what happened, we then grew the middle class in this country and turned it into the greatest economic engine in the history of mankind. By the time my uncle was president, I was 10 years old. Our country owned half the wealth on the face of the earth. We were the biggest exporter. Until 1971, there were times between 45 and 71 when we exported more than the rest of the world combined. And everybody wanted American-made goods. Made in America was a brand that nobody else could meet. People, when I traveled with my father and mother abroad, people would come up on the street and offer to buy my blue jeans because you couldn't get them except in the United States. They wanted our transistor radios, which we made here. They wanted our RCA Victrolas. They wanted our music. They wanted our culture. They wanted American televisions. They wanted They wanted our automobiles. Our automobiles, American automobiles, were the gold standard automobile anywhere in the world. Everybody wanted them. And it wasn't just our goods they wanted. They loved our country.